you got, first of all, and I wanted to, Mary and everybody and Kathy have done a job, meeting with respect to the subcommittees. Kathy, just to update you, and I'll let Kathy update you further. Kathy discovered in talking to the people at the Council of Governments that there was potential grant money available for us, and we were able to accelerate things and approve. And Kathy, I think, can advise you that we were told today
You got,
that
first
we
of
were
all,
approved for grant funds. And I wanted to, Mary and everybody and Kathy have done a job.
Kathy can explain
meeting
further
with respect to
what we put it in for
subcommittees
budget-wise,
but we're going to have some funds
just to
help us
I'll
do
let Kathy update
what
you
we
further.
talked about.
Kathy discovered
at the last meeting with respect to our own Council of Governments that there was
also today,
potential grant money available
checked
for
on
the survey, and we received an email with the draft survey, which I emailed out to all of you. Another significant occurrence in reading through the local newspapers, the local newsletter that comes out. I was following the Woodwich Country Club. There has been a bid or a proposal made by a group of developers, and I understand from a little backup that I've done research on it that there are others that are expressing an interest. So we can talk about that. So with that, and to move things along, since we are under a tornado watch, which I really appreciate the seriousness of it, having spent 3 years in Fort Hood, Texas in the Army, and tornadoes aren't anything to, down there it was a regular occurrence, but you never got used to it. We will move it along, and at this point, I don't know if Mary made it on, but Kathy, I'd like to turn it over to you to explain a little about what's going on with the survey for the regional survey. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to really take a look at it. This is just a draft, and also with the grant and how we got the grant and the budget for the grant.
Sure. In terms of the survey, from what I understand, we're going to finalize.
Sorry.
Oh,
Can
hey,
you
Mary.
see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
That's fine. Kathy, just fine. Take it away. I just wanted to make sure I was audible. I've done easier things to get on this meeting.
Okay, well, in terms of the COGS survey, from what I understand from Eugene Lifshitz from the COG, it's supposed to be finalized by the end of the week, and they expect to get this out by the middle of next week. So we probably need to, re-engage and talk about distribution of the survey. I'm not sure what the time schedule is for return, but they're going to be sending out, I guess, instructions on that next week. And I took a quick look at the survey. I think some of the updates were pretty interesting, but I think it's a better survey, and they did take some of our comments into consideration, obviously, as well as I think Madison also had some concerns. And I think a couple other towns did as well. So they did, work on updating that to be more reflective of what we'd like to see in the survey. In terms of the grant funding, in talking to David Fink a while back, I found out that I was under the impression that the COG was getting funding from the Department of Housing to do the planning, the housing plans, and to find out that they weren't accessing the Department of Housing funding. And this was a funding RFP that went out in June for towns. It was a second round for towns that were in the planning stages to apply for up to $15,000 in planning funds. So when I found that out, I was like, well, we have expenses, that are not being covered. So, we perhaps should be going after this funding. So we were able to fast track it. We met with the outreach group, and because we had identified some expenses in terms of creating, perhaps having a more robust data platform for collecting data for our local survey. Even some administrative expenses that the towns, incurring from, having these meetings, doing the tech support, doing the minutes, the grant management that they'll have to do to manage the grant funding. And we had and printing and postage, so just expenses that would come up for just doing public outreach, because we really wanted to make sure that we had a robust public outreach initiative, considering when we look at the other housing plans, even though they had like outreach, when you look at the survey results, some of them had like a 1 or 2% response rate, which we felt was not acceptable. We wanted to have a higher response rate in terms of getting feedback from community residents. So the application was actually submitted last Friday, and when I touched base with Betsy, she said she heard yesterday that they called them and it was approved. So we have the funding, which is pretty quick for receiving grant funding from the state. Usually I have to wait 2 years. But I think it's great. We got a total of 12,750 was our total budget. So like I said, it's going for the survey platform, the printing, the postage, some data analysis, and potentially leasing a facility. Betsy had talked about that maybe we rent out like the JCC if we're doing a charrette, if we're past this COVID stage, we could actually meet with the community and discuss housing strategies. So I think it's a good thing that we do have this to support our efforts.
Yeah, that's fantastic that we got that money and we'll be able to use it. I mean, one of the things I thought of also is when we're talking about disseminating, especially our own survey, is tapping in potentially to hiring at minimum wage some of the Amity students to
Right, that was
become
included.
involved.
I forgot to mention that we did include funding for, we calculated like 10 students, for 10 hours making minimum wage, and so we budgeted $1,500 for that.
So the whole point is, I think it's a great thing. It's a great benefit for us to have that. We don't have to go, so to speak, hat in hand to the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance asking for funds. And I think it also allows us to do, one of the things Debbie brought up last time, and I think Ollie has brought up, the thing of doing our own surveys, which get us the information in a better way, and better ways that we can understand the information, better algorithms to help us go through the information. So that's great that we have that. You did mention, Kathy, that we don't have a time limit on when the survey, the SCOG survey needs to be back.
No, he didn't tell me that. He said that it would probably go out middle of next week, but I didn't follow up to see when he expects that to be returned. So I'm not sure.
The original time limit, if I wasn't mistaken, when they were talking about it going out in August, weren't they talking about a 6-week turnaround? Or was it less than that? Anybody remember?
Yeah, it was supposed to come back by September 7th.
Okay.
So they were talking about 4 or 5 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So if they get it out next week, we're talking early October. Do we have the ability then to get things into the newsletter and the whatever the other thing is, the little newspaper?
My follow-up job from the outreach committee was to prepare a PR piece, press release explaining what people should expect, what was going to happen. And of course, you can't do that until you know yourself because that's the first paragraph in any press release is, this is what to expect, this is when it's going to happen, and so forth. And we still don't have that information. So
there was a little piece in the town's newsletter.
Yeah, she mentioned that we were going to have 2 of them.
Yeah, but
2 surveys. Yeah, but it doesn't give the details. So exactly how this thing is going to be rolled out, and available. Those are the details that people need to have. And we, as an outreach committee, need to be able to start to publicize in all the ways that we discussed in our meeting. Because it's, especially if we have a fairly short timeline, people need to, and we, as you know, we don't have public means of communication that are very quick. At least we don't have very many of them. So we're going to have to pull out all the stops, I think, you know, the posters and the placards and whatever, all the stuff we talked about, but we don't have the information yet.
What about, has there been a discussion of locations to put the paper copies of it? Is it worth, you know?
Another question, I don't know whether they're admitting paper copies to their survey.
Yeah, maybe it's just electronic.
Or maybe just electronic. And from what I saw, the survey, they didn't make that many changes. And it certainly is not going to answer all the questions we need to have answered. So I think we should just, I mean, my first image of it was we should just let them do what they're going to do for whatever reason they've chosen not to make as many changes as I expected them to make. And we'll just get on with our own survey as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Well, we got to do that, but we need to also, I think, at least get it out with in some fashion. We've got to figure out a way to get it out to the people. I mean, I know putting out paper copies is an issue if they're not going to have paper copies, because it may even be an issue with people not wanting to still handle stuff or things of that nature, you know, at this point going forward. But the question really is, we need to get something in the newsletter or something to say that these surveys are there, and encourage the people and tell them that this is phase 1 and phase 2 is going to be your more targeted Woodbridge survey.
Yeah, I think it's very important to support the regional survey for, I mean, I have to credit them with knowing what they're doing, whatever it is. And we need to support that. And we also need to get people accustomed to the idea that this is an issue that is going to be discussed over the next number of months. And this is the first phase. It gives us an opportunity to announce that, to announce ourselves, to let them know what's coming up next, even if we don't know because of the pandemic. Yeah, I think it's something that we need to jump right on.
Well, we have
Yeah,
social media. We have social media available to us as well. I mean, that's key. We have. Is the senior center still open? I know the town hall is closed. If they're still open, we can leave paper copies at the senior center and put, you know, like Mary's saying, we need to have details. You know, where are these items going to be available? Can't be the town hall. Maybe the library. Maybe the senior center. We could put this on all the social media, the PTOs at school. You know, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of things, but like Mary said, it's really hard for any of us to put anything out there in the newspapers, et cetera, because we don't have those details. And hopefully next week, once it starts getting sent out, they'll let us know what the deadline is and when they need to be returned, and we can kind of go forward and get that out there.
We also need to know whether they require separate URLs from every submission, because that means that we can't go into the senior center with our computers and, you know, and process information for other individuals. I mean, we really need a lot of information we don't have.
Kathy, do we have anything from this in the individual? I mean, he sent you the thing, but I mean, is there a, whatever you want to call it, a fact sheet coming with this, you know, instruction sheet or anything like that? Or, I mean, if they say they're going to finalize it by the end of the week and they're going to get it out next week, how? And did he explain that to you at all?
No, he just sent the survey. I was just asking him, you know, a timeline. I didn't ask him the specifics, but I imagine they're gonna like give us instructions on how to roll it out. I imagine it's gonna be an online survey, so we'll get the link. And I imagine there's gonna be some instructions that go with that.
And if we're going to, and it was somebody, I think it was Chris made a good point that we're going to need to have, we can't require separate URLs because then the people in the senior center can't vote. But what do we do to also prevent ballot stuffing? I'm a baseball fan. I remember when the All-Star team years ago, Jim remembers this, when everybody from the Cincinnati Reds was elected on the team. And, you know, how do we avoid that type of situation?
Well, that's how you do it, because you have individual URLs, you just cast out every other additional submission from the same URL.
And I understand that, but what about the senior center though? What about?
Well, these are the kind of questions we need to ask this individual. We need to ask them and tell them we need the answers right away. If not just us, if they want information and everybody's going to disseminate it, they need to get information out, and they need to get it out ahead of time.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
I could follow up with them and ask them
Yeah.
to give, the instructions and how they're going to be capturing the information, and whether or not we could have a community computer for the senior center, and, for whoever else would need that type of congregate.
Yeah, and also, I think we need to ask, will there be the availability for people to fill it out in paper? People that aren't, computer adept? Or are you just eliminating them? I mean, we could, for example, you mentioned about the Jewish Community Center. You mentioned about the library. The library would be a great place to put a bunch of the forms with a poster over it, a bunch of the surveys with a big poster over it. People that go into the library, they can grab a couple, you know what I mean? And we could tell them to grab a couple. I don't even know the form you sent out. You're filling in your name information, you know what I mean? You're filling it in. I think at some point, I gotta go look at it. No, maybe you're not. You're just.
Yeah, I
it's a
didn't see
really-
that, Dominic. I didn't
Yeah,
see it.
it's an anonymous survey, so I suppose it doesn't make any difference. You're right, Lou, that we could have all Cincinnati Reds living in our in Woodbridge by the time we're done. But I mean, it's still doable for someone to take home and fill it out in paper. If that's not going to be the case, then we need to know that, and we need to educate the people that you're going to have to do it on your computer or your phone or whatever. But we need to get more information from them. And what bothers me a little about it is they're talking about getting this thing out next week, having it back in 5 weeks. And if in that case, we are a week away with Labor Day in between, and we have nothing other than the fact that Kathy managed to get us a draft of it by emailing someone who was able to send her a draft. And it's not very efficient. But
Well,
I think
again, I'm not sure what the return date is. Maybe he provided that just to give us a heads up, this is what it's going to look like.
okay.
So again, I didn't ask him, I just asked him for when he thought this was going to start rolling out.
Okay.
If I-
Well, okay.
I may submit a general conclusion about all of this, based on what I see in the survey and also what I'm hearing, and what Glenn Chalder told us last week about the timing, how we have to be really cognizant of the fact that we're now working with about six months to get this done. I think we should support the survey as much as we possibly can, but I think we should also work in parallel with the survey and not depend on the survey. We'll find out what it says, but I think we should work on our own timeline and our own agenda for outreach and analysis, and so that we can get to the finish line at the right time. Otherwise, as he said himself, they were already working with a really tight timeline, and other towns didn't think they were going to make it, and now they're even behind that schedule. So I just think that we should work with them as much as we possibly can, but always think in parallel with them, not in dependency.
Well, yeah, we have to get it out. And I think our timeline, we have, and I think Kathy arranged to talk to David Fink. We have the David Fink meeting on September 27th, correct? I
Yes.
believe. And then we have our regular October meeting. And I think our goal was after the David Fink meeting. I mean, I was listening to everybody. I think our goal was to try to get our survey out sometime in early November, to be able to, in that time frame, late October, early November would be the time frame to get our survey out. And then the question is, in the survey committee in looking at it, we now have some funding, but also to look at what is an appropriate time frame to have ours out for. And if we need to have a special meeting to work on it, I think frankly, it hampers us a little to have to go back on the Zoom again. I think we were much more productive when we were sitting around the table, but that I think is, and I rely on the survey committee to say, okay, fine, yeah, that is the appropriate time frame. That's our target to do it. And we have David Fink coming in on the 27th. And I think I'll ask Kathy. Kathy, and David's just going to explain to us how to best achieve the public outreach, other than the survey, correct?
Yeah, I think he's going to probably provide a lot more, support in terms of how the regional effort is going to be coordinated with, our own local housing study. I mean, he's very good at doing the outreach. He has facilitated. I know he has facilitated in the past the plan of conservation and development. And he could talk about those types of outreach because he's willing to come in and do community engagement. And I think that's a good use of his time because he is pretty good in engaging the community and making them understand what we're trying to achieve with this housing, affordable housing plan.
I mean, and I think right now, at least the way I'm reading it, and I'll listen to anybody else, trying to set, we probably setting something up where we have some public forum in maybe the center school gymnasium or something of that nature, targeting it hopefully for the end of not the end, sometime in October from a time frame perspective would probably be a lot. If that's what he thought, would probably be a lot better given the issues that are going around with COVID. I mean, that's one of the things that's a monkey wrench in this whole thing. In other words, are we even going to be able to have things? Because I got to tell you, big meetings, public meetings on Zoom or WebEx, in my opinion, are not very successful. And so I don't see it. So hopefully we can have some sort of a public forum. And I'm just throwing this out. If we're tying that public forum, we're tying his presentation to the people and, questions and answers and everything. We do that and we tie that with the kickoff or close to the kickoff of our survey. That may give us a double boost, a boost for our survey.
I think,
But,
Dominic, piggybacking on what you're saying, I mean, if we have this survey that's coming out next week, distributed throughout the town in whatever manner it's going to be done, and then, like you said, have that meeting in October, and based on the comments at that meeting, create our own survey based on the concerns at that meeting voiced by town members, as Mary said, then we can create our own and hopefully have that out. I think Mary said maybe November, I think she may have said, and then do it that way. In regards to the town meeting, though, I think we have to be realistic here and realize that, I mean, yeah, of course, we would love to be in person and have a big meeting, but I think we have to be realistic and notice that we're probably going to have to do this via WebEx. I mean, it is what it is, but I think that would be a good timeline so that we can send out the initial survey, have the meeting with the presenter that's going to be with us the end of September, and then subsequently have our first engagement with his assistants, right? We should utilize the resources made available and probably aim for October, and then based on those comments, then create our own survey to follow up based on the engagement with the community. That's just my 2 cents.
I like that
Anybody
sequence.
else have any comments on that? And
Hi,
Okay.
Dominic, it's Chris. I came down because the weather is not great and I'm not happy having Kathy and Pua upstairs when the roads are already starting to get puddly and all this other good stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And I know you guys are all safely at home, but the 3 of us aren't. It doesn't sound like you had any PR that went out regarding this survey that's going out from Scrog. Is that correct?
There was a heads up
We
in the
we didn't
town's
have any
newsletter.
information to send out.
But we
Yeah,
should have
no
at least
information,
been
correct.
saying that there was a survey coming.
Yes,
That's what we talked about in August was
there
heads
was.
up, there's a survey coming.
Right.
But
There,
Chris,
there,
we
there
didn't
was
have any
that on-
details at all. You have to have
We
details
don't
to
need
say when.
details. We needed people to know there was a survey coming that they should respond to. So
Right,
I'll
and-
have to
and-
talk to Betsy when I get back because I'm still on vacation and see if I can get her to do something with the e-newsletter. In the interim, everybody needs to get on to whatever Facebook or whatever they have to get the word out there so that that goes out. While you have a survey that you can be doing in November, you still have a time frame. This thing has to be done by June 1st. So you may be looking at your survey as something modifying the initial report that comes out, but you still have to have a report in by June 1st. So you may want to look at this as a phased thing where you've got the initial thing that's done through Scrog, and then you use your funding that you've gotten through the grant to do a follow-up one that may come just several months or something after the initial one that comes out. That way you've at least had something that meets with the requirement of the state, but then you can have something that is replacing it that's more tailored to what the town is.
Well, I think if we get our information and we start seriously drafting the plan in January, we should have enough time to be able to do it. Now, there are problems that you have with respect to the requirement of, I think, a required public hearing. And I mean, it has to be coordinated in some fashion, not necessarily coordinated, but there has to be some input, I believe, at some point as we go through this from planning and zoning. But I mean, I guess I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little confused about the situation of saying, okay, we have to have a plan based on the regional study. And then we'll work on, so that we comply with the time frame, but we don't, our own stuff we do later. Because I think our intention, based on my listening to Glenn, I felt that we should get all our research and everything done by the end of this year. And that included doing our survey, so that once we rolled into 2022, we could start working on the drafting of the plan.
All I'm saying is that what happens is once a plan is created, it is by statute supposed to be updated at a minimum every 4 years or 5 years. So
5 years.
in effect, this is very much like a town plan of conservation and development. But a town plan of conservation and development isn't stagnant. It can change quicker than the statutory requirement. And all I'm suggesting is that if you allow yourselves to adopt whatever it is that the regional plan comes up with, then you can then subsequently update it in a short period of time. But that's, this is your choice.
So they're going to, after the survey comes in, they're going to come up with a draft plan that is applicable across the region, and that plan will be sufficient to comply, is what you're saying.
What they will come up with is a draft plan for the Council of Governments that will include the draft plans for each one of the towns within that. And so you will have a draft plan. It may not be precisely what you want, but that doesn't mean you can't tweak it after the initial thing gets done. The main thing is you have to have something in place by June 1st. And rather than rush it, I would think that what you could do would be to you know, let the consultants for the Council of Governments do their thing, get that report under your belt, and then tune it to what you want and not scramble to try to get it done by June 1st.
And we tune it for what we want based on not only based on basically if we want to do our own survey, based on the responses and any type of public input that we get in the interim.
Correct. And then
Okay.
that way, if for some reason COVID is kind of, maybe it's not going to go away, but if it allows you to be able to have in-person meetings, then you can gather some better information that way too. I'm just afraid that you're going to be rushing into this thing and you're not going to have really what you want anyway.
Well, we're going to have some sort of a report. I mean, hopefully, first of all, with respect to the survey for the COG, you know, we don't even have any details. And you're right. We maybe we should be getting out to the people. We don't even have any details as to how the survey is going to function. And
There's a
this is
lot
one of
more-
the things we were talking about earlier, is that we need some more information. We're going to support the regional survey. We're going to get it out. And they're going to start working on our plan. But then once that's done, which we suspect it would be sometime in early October, then we hit the ground running on the issues that we need to come up with.
Correct.
So we're not going to stop. We're not going to say, well, that's it, Scrog. We're not going to go back to you. We'll certainly, when they come in with their report, and I would want to know when they're going to come in with their report, because certainly if their position is, and they haven't provided us with any timing, and they showed in the meeting we had at the end of whatever it was, the end of July, that they weren't that keen on timing issues, because a lot of the towns pointed it out. If I would want to know from them right now, when do you intend on producing your regional the draft of your regional report? Because
They have to have it out by the beginning of May so that there can be hearings.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, if they're going to wait to the beginning of May to come out with a report, I guess my question is this: what are we doing in the meantime? We're writing our own report. We're drafting a plan, an affordable housing plan for the town, which then I suppose we can incorporate into their report. And I think it was Glenn or somebody mentioned this, that the towns that he were working with who weren't going to go with the region were concerned about that, because if you get it in May, how do you get it done by June 1st? Or you don't get it done by June 1st. What you got to do is say, okay, and sign off on whatever they write. And I think this is a discussion that this committee has to have. If we want to do that, and then we work a little slower with the idea that we're going to do it afterwards. But I think that once we gather the information, there's no obligation for us to make a commitment. We work with the Regional Council of Governments, and then when the time comes, whether it's in January when we have all of our information and we're waiting for them to do it, and we begin drafting an outline of a plan. And what the regional thing, or the regional plan is, I look at it as basically our fallback if we're not doing it. But we may have a plan done that is successful, appropriate, to the point, not overkill like some of the other plans are, and ready to go when the regional plan comes out. So I think we can potentially accomplish both, with the understanding that if we are going slower, if we need more information on our own addressing Woodbridge, there is always the regional plan, which supposedly will incorporate what a plan for Woodbridge, which what I'm hearing is that will be sufficient for the state. correct?
Dominic, my understanding of the process is that, you know, they're gonna be developing, it's much more than just a survey. They're doing a lot of data analysis. And they're gonna be coming up with strategies, which is not gonna be strategies that they're gonna be coming up with in a vacuum. These are strategies that they're gonna be meeting with us and discussing. So I don't think we should be doing two separate tracks on this. I think we should be using their capacity along with what we bring to the table. So this is not something they're doing in a silo. They're going to be coming up with strategies and vetting it with the community and vetting it with us and vetting with whoever needs to be, you know, hearing this.
I understand that. If that's what they're going to do, then they need to come in my opinion, and meet with us or Zoom with us or whatever to explain that to us. What is their plan? What are they doing? What is the information they're gathering so we don't step on each other's toes? How they're going to develop the plan? How we're going to do it? I mean, that could be a separate whole meeting for us to have with them. I guess what I'm concerned about, and then everybody, I'd like to hear other people's opinions. What I'm concerned about is we're hearing, this is what we think they're going to do. This is what we assume they're going to be doing. I want to hear what they're going to do. I want to hear, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to benefit you. This is why you don't have to write your own plan at this point, but this is what would help us if you did this, and then we're going to do this, and then on May 1st, you're going to have, we're going to come up with this plan, and this is the input you would have had to us, and we would have had to you prior to that point. I'd like to do it face to face. Or
Well,
Zoom to Zoom.
they did provide with the scope of services that I sent to Dominic, and I sent to some of the committees. I could certainly send that back out to the group as a whole. That outlines the work they're going to be doing with a proposed timeline.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I missed that, you know, and I'll admit I'll go back and take a look at it then, or anything like that. But if you know, but I think that's getting a schedule for ourselves. Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing is that our schedule then should just defer to whatever, you know, we have to segue it with their schedule. In other words, if we're doing our own survey, we're providing this, but we're doing it, what we're working on for something that we're going to tweak after we comply with the, after we sign off on whatever the region comes up with.
Is there anything that precludes us from working in a collaborative manner with COG in terms of, you know, they do their survey. We have our first meeting in October with Mr. Fink. We then create our own survey. We get those back in December. We have all of our facts in by December within our committee. And then is there anything that prevents us from then going back to them and saying, hey, this is what we found. These are the top priorities based on our specific survey. Why can't we just give them that information so that they can work that into their report that they're going to be giving to us by May 1st?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the way I understood the process. Yeah. That this is not two silo, you know, operations, that we're going to be aligning our resources and our capacity, and we're going to be able to inform whatever they're going to come up with strategies, and then we're going to be able to say, no, that's not what we're hearing. No, that's not going to work. I mean, it's just, you know, they're not just going to come up with strategies without getting any input from the community. That's exactly what they're not supposed to be doing.
So basically we work together and we give them the information that we gather, in addition to what they gather, and we work together to create this report so that we don't have to tweak it or completely change the entire plan, right? The thought, I guess, is that we would only have to make minimal changes when it comes in on May 1st, is my understanding, so that we could get it ready for June 1st. In the meantime, utilize their resources to have these community hearings to decipher what it is that people want in this town, and things of that nature that we're supposed to be doing.
Right, and I'm not sure what their timeline for actually analyzing their survey, but I think it would be good to like use that as a platform for our survey. Once we understand what the results was of their first survey, it may lead us to other questions we want to further inquire.
Right.
That's a good point. I just
Well,
want to point out, at the risk of being, speaking against it yet again, because I want to reiterate what Dominic said about the importance of everybody participating here and giving us your views. But once again, I feel like I've said this at every single meeting. I have a problem with our charge. Our charge did not set us out, it does not actually say we're supposed to write the affordable housing plan. It does not say that, as Glenn Chalder assumed that it did. Simple charge. It doesn't say that. It says all kinds of other things that are unreasonable. And I mean, because they're so broadly written, and you can say that is maybe just a function of when it was written way last winter and what was going on at that time. But it doesn't say to us, this is your goal. Your single goal here is not only to engage the community, which we must never forget as a major goal of this group. Data analysis, writing reports, all the rest of it. It's very important, but engaging the community, educating the community, bringing the community along with us as we learn these things and as we learn things from the regional group. That should be a major focus of us, no matter what else is going on. But as I said, I don't think that we got a real clear view then. What are we supposed to be doing? It just says we're supposed to advise. We're supposed to look at the OCA information. We're supposed to think about the long-term housing needs of the community. It's very vague in those respects. And I think that's a problem. And now the second problem is that we're dealing with a regional group that Woodbridge has installed this committee and obligated us to work with the regional COG, which is, fine, but you have to explain to people how they're supposed to do that according to your thinking. If you don't do that, you condemn us to try to figure it out for ourselves. And I think that's what's happening right now.
I have also concerns along those same lines. I'm just wondering if, as Nicole said, if we work in a true collaborative way with the regional group, what is the point in a second report? Who demands that report by June 1st? Who is saying that we must do it? And it seems to be just reinventing the wheel. It seems to be a duplication of efforts if we work in a true collaborative way from the very beginning. Do you know what I'm saying? Then I just don't understand the point. Is each town required to submit a plan by June 1st?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a whole procedure that's detailed in the statute as to what we have to do.
right.
And furthermore, the statute also requires that plan has to be updated at a minimum every 5 years.
5 years. Mhm.
Right.
So it's just like the town plan of conservation and development, but it's got a shorter time frame.
But that's the whole point. Our community is on edge about these issues. We don't want to roll something out that's going to make them more on edge or going to contribute to more misunderstanding. It's really essential, in my view, that we stay ahead of that curve and that we do what we can so that when people see the ultimate report, whether it's written by the COG or it's written by us, it's going to be written with certain terminology and certain expectations. And people need to be prepared for that. And it's our job to make sure that they know what affordable housing is and what it's not. They know what their options are and what works for us in Woodbridge. I mean, if we can possibly do that, that's our job, in my view. Our goal.
Yeah, Mary, I think you're right. I mean, we're like the PR people for this report. I mean, in the background, they're writing the report, they're preparing the questionnaire. We can create our own questionnaire. We need to tell people what affordable housing is. We have to run those meetings with the town people with the help of the resources that they're giving us that can answer more specific questions about it. I mean, that is our job. We're townspeople. We are, these are our neighbors. These are people that our children go to school with. And so that's what our job is, I think. That's a major part of it. I completely agree with you. But we do have that deadline looming, and I think you're right with our charge. I don't think we write it per se. I think it is this agency that writes the report, and we give them the information based on what our town needs, are, which we will not know until we have the meetings, right, and all the questionnaires, and ask them to put that in there, that that's what our requirements are for our specific town, and hope that they listen.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I love to have somebody, maybe at the Council of Governments, to have a one-on-one with, or to have them come to our committee meeting. So we get the report, we get the draft report on April 15th. So we can then, at that point, mark it up, our portion, the Woodbridge portion.
Dominic, don't forget, you've got David Fink, who is working with the Council of Governments on this whole project, coming and meeting with you at the end of September.
Well, then maybe then he'll be able to answer. I know David well, and he'll be able to answer the questions for us as to how we're going to do this, how we're going to avoid duplicity. I mean, this actually, to tell you the truth, the conversation we're having segues into one of the topics I put down on tonight's agenda, which is the Woodwich Country Club update. And I'd like to have a discussion amongst it. And I know the rain's getting worse and we need to really wrap this up, but I'd like to have a discussion amongst it. I don't know whether everybody has had a chance to look at the proposal. From what I understand, a proposal was made to the Board of Selectmen, and there are other proposals coming up. If you look at the proposal, it is financially beneficial to the town. It provides for some 20-something, I believe, quote unquote, affordable units. Heavy emphasis on, not a heavy emphasis, there's an emphasis on age-restricted housing. There's a group of age-restricted housing. There are, and when I read it, and I was told I was wrong by someone I was asking about it, there are no attached units whatsoever. There are no rental units whatsoever, except if the condos are rented. And there are a large number of large as it said in there, 4 and 5 bedroom colonials on 1.5 acres. Now, there's no guarantee the town's going to take this. There's no guarantee these are people to find. I understand there's other people bidding it. I mean, Woodbridge Country Club is a prime piece of land for people to do development on. We had a discussion that it's part of looking at where you would, if you were looking at a piece of land that could be developed to incorporate affordable housing, mixed housing, attached units, rental units, and things of that nature, it's a prime piece. And there's only a few other pieces, maybe in the downtown, that may be able to accommodate such, but that don't have necessarily the benefits. So what I'd like to, I mean, if anybody's had a chance to take a look at it, but it is something that is unique to our town, which needs to be in the plan.
Hey, Dominic. Dominic?
Yeah.
I tuned into the Board of Selectmen meeting, and they had the group there. I went through the plan. I did it when the other group, Insight, was trying to acquire 60 some odd acres there too, and I was part of that. But and just listening tonight, what they are planning is essentially schematic. They haven't done any engineering. They're just plopping stuff. Here's the lay of the land. This is what we'd like to do with it. They're not sure whether or not they can actually do it or not. But the offer is there that that they like to do it. A lot of questions came up about education. What are you going to do with the added students? What if there's not enough room in the schools, et cetera, et cetera? And then they asked a question about, and I guess that the 1.5 acre homes are going to be off Johnson and Ansonia Road, with the driveways directly off and each driveway is gonna serve 4 houses. So the thing is, you're gonna have a common driveway going up, serve 2 houses on either side, keep going back, and 2 houses on the other, and back of them. So that's their plan to do that. And then they're gonna have, some roads inside the property for the, for everybody else, for the regular, for the medium homes, the affordable homes and whatever it is. So that's what they plan, but they don't really have a lot of information. It was just more of and I was surprised questions really to come up from the Board of Selectmen on it tonight, but they're actually gonna meet again, at their regular meeting next week to put it on their agenda. But there's really not a lot other than the fact that it looks good on paper. It's $9 million. They're gonna rip that from the old country club. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do that. But again, it's all on schematic. Really hasn't been a lot of thought when a lot of questions were asked tonight about it. That's all. So.
Yep. When I read through the plan, my feeling was exactly as Dominic's was. I was sort of disappointed in it. It's not, and it may be good for the town, but that's not our purpose here. Our purpose is to comply with our charge and try to make something work that's required. Doesn't matter what I believe in or not. Why? And when I look at this plan, first of all, there's not much that's affordable there. They have a different definition than we've been talking about. It's all basically the same type of housing that we have in the community already. There's nothing that's connected or rentals, and that's the area where we can make up some ground on. And this is the only piece of property that the town really has control over. And I was hoping that more could be done there.
Yeah. Did anybody else get a chance to take a look at it? Any comments about it? I mean,
I did look at it. I mean, it looks really pretty on paper. I mean, skating rink, swimming pool, age restricted section. I saw $200,000 homes. I don't know how many, and the other 1.5 acre homes that Dwight was referring to. I mean, it looks really pretty on paper, but
yeah.
I don't know. I just hope it doesn't contradict with what we're trying to do. If we put forward our housing plan, like you said, we may have to incorporate that into it, or some way, somehow. I didn't give much thought about the school, but I guess that's a good point too. But
I think chopping on what Donovan's saying, it looks great on paper, like he said, but I mean, our charge is our charge, and I would like to have seen way more. I don't sound very professional there, but I'd like to see a lot more affordable housing there and age restricted housing. And the age restricted housing they have there is certainly not affordable housing. I'm not going to pay attention to the numbers because it's market rate, and who knows what it'll be 3 years from now. And I'm sure that they inflated the numbers to make it look like a better picture for the town, that we're getting almost whatever it is, they said millions of dollars in tax revenue, and it's better for them. But I think that given our charge, like all of you are saying, we have to hope that the Board of Selectmen take that into consideration when looking at these plans, because I think we need to push the developers to, whether we have to lower the sale price or whatever, but to push these developers to make more than 15% housing affordable. I mean, that's our big piece of land. Like Lou said, I mean, that's it. So we really need to be aggressive about that.
Dominic, I took a look at it as well.
Go ahead. Go ahead, buddy.
I took a look at it as well, and I think like any time when you're dealing with real estate, there's negotiations involved, so it's not to say that the Board of Selectmen or the town can't come back and say, hey, listen, instead of 20-something affordable units, how about 35 or 40? Bottom line, you got to remember is that a developer is not going to be able to do all affordable housing in there because he's got to make a profit, right? So there's got to be some mix of all the different categories that they're proposing. But it's for me, it's a start, in a negotiation that could take place. And like you said, if there's other developers, down the line coming up and interest in this property, I think, we should make some recommendations to the Board of Selectmen of possibly how many affordable units we think, we would like to see there. Again, it's not going to be completely affordable, but, something certainly more than what they're proposing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to go back to our charge. By the way, we're focusing on the affordable portion of the charge, but the charge also says mixed types of housing, other types of housing. Full disclosure, this is what I do. I represent these kind of developers. These are the kind of people I work with and I go forward with and I stand before commissions. Number one, I can tell you right now what David Fink is going to say on September 27th. He's going to say that the most school children are generated. They're generated from 3, 4, and 5 bedroom colonials. So what we're doing, if you want to talk about school children, you're proposing a development that's going to add school children. So, and we have plenty of 3, 4, and 5 bedroom colonials in town that will turn over in the course of things. As people get older, they will move out. Younger people will move in with kids. The number of costs per child for education, it is probably the phoniest number in the world that you could create. It has no bearing to reality, except to say that, yeah, that's what our budget is. It includes hard costs. And I will tell you this, and this is proven, and they will all admit it. As your enrollment goes down, your costs per children go up because you don't lose the types of things that cause the cost per children to go up. So all that stuff is it's nice, it's fancy. What they're basing it on is your tax rate's high, it's going to stay high, we're going to give you $800,000 homes. What I'm upset about is there are really no attached units. There's a couple of units that are quote unquote attached by a garage. They're duplexes. What Buddy said is correct. You can only limit that. You can't say you got to do it all affordable. You've got to make it economically feasible. So if you had 250 units there, and you were talking about a friendly affordable, not a mandatory 30%, but even you said at 250 units and you said, okay, fine, we'd like 20% or 25% affordable. And it involved 1 and 2 bedroom or 2 bedroom townhouses. It involved apartments and it involved cluster homes limited to no more than 3 bedrooms on small lots. That might be something in which you can get affordable, but you can also provide the middle housing, the different housing opportunities that we don't have. Buddy can maybe answer this question or Debbie can answer this question. If a young person who wants to rent an apartment in Woodbridge, Buddy, where would they go?
Yeah, right now, right in the flats of Woodbridge, where there's, 2 family properties. That's about it.
Okay. So somebody that I know was at Amity Physical Therapy. The young girl who was just graduated, get a job, she's working there. She's now got to get an apartment, her and her girlfriend, not in Woodbridge. They had to go out of Woodbridge to find an apartment. So, these are the kind of discussions we need to have because it needs to be part of our plan. Part of our plan, and I pulled up the charge. If you're going to look at the charge, part of our charge is to increase housing opportunities in Woodbridge. And so we're going to have to address it in some fashion in such a way as to be cooperative as opposed to being adversarial. But we need to address it. We can't ignore it. And like Lou said, I looked at it and a lot of it's the same housing we already have in town. So any more commission members have any comments, had a chance to look at it or anything? And I think the thing to do with the
Mary, you're
rain getting
muted.
worse. Huh?
I think Mary was
Hi.
trying to say something. She's muted.
I was agreeing with you. I said that
Now she's frozen.
Mary, are you there? Or no, she's gone. Jim, were you going to say something or?
No, I mean, look, my initial reaction was I looked at it and I said, gee, that's a lot of units, none of which seem to fit what we were looking to increase. And I mean, that's the big potential to do what this committee is trying to assist the town in doing. And if that goes off the board, we build a whole bunch of 3 and 4 bedroom houses and, 22 units that are affordable and a few age restricted ones. The opportunities that we have are limited in the town. And if you take that one off the board, I don't know, maybe you will see that Mount Laurel thing coming at us.
Yeah, that's something that somebody has to stand up and pull the Band-Aid off the scab. You know what I mean? When it comes to talking about it. And I mean, my response to the person I was talking with was, where are the housing for the younger people? The people like that girl working at Amity. Where's housing for her? And the other thing is this: this obsession with comparing school children to nuclear waste. You don't want nuclear waste in your town. You don't want school kids in your town. I think it's and the focus on it's terrible. That's my feeling. It's just terrible.
Dominic, I mean, the thing about school children, you're right. I mean, this discussion is, they try to break it down and say, well, each kid's going to cost X dollars.
Yeah.
And, it's like cost accounting in a building when you have, you got fixed costs and you got variable costs, and nobody wants to talk about. If you added one kid, it's not going to make, if you added the one kid that makes you have to get another teacher, okay, fine. But that's not really the way that it works. I mean, and the numbers are sort of, they're funny numbers. I mean, you make them as they're made to order. So I think you're right, and
Yeah.
it doesn't.
And David, honestly, David Fink, I can tell you this: David Fink will have a bonanza of information with you on that, from having heard him before as a speaker. And I think it's important for us to know about it. Well, it's getting late enough. The rain's getting harder. We have a meeting on the 27th with David Fink. We have another meeting on October 6th for our regular meeting. From this point on, I think the one issue we need to resolve is, what are we going to do at this point? And we have someone, what are we doing at this point to market the regional survey? And how are we going to get more information to help us market the regional survey?
Dominic, I just wanted to go back and just make one more comment on the Woodbridge Country Club, because I do think it's incumbent on us to make to draw some what we see as requirements for what should be going on that property in terms of the affordability, because that is a golden opportunity for us to even perhaps reach a moratorium where we're out of the woods for 4 years. So I don't think we want to squander that. So I think we should maybe look at least 40 units or so on that property, and say that we would like to see rental property on there as well. And I think we should come up with a configuration of what we'd like to, what would really match the needs of Woodbridge. I mean, that's the whole thing. We're looking at understanding the current needs and the future needs of Woodbridge, and that's a golden opportunity to do that. And I think we should come up, maybe based on the analysis of what the COG comes up with, along with our own analysis. I think we should, inform the Board of Selectmen that this is what we recommend in terms of housing units on that property.
That's a very good point. And it's something I've been thinking about, and the question is, how do we inform them? And we really can't wait, because for all we know, they could be scheduling, theoretically, they could schedule a referendum in 2 months to sell the property. They need to have a referendum to sell the property. And I know there's probably a concern that they want to have these big houses so that some people that hyperventilate at the mention of townhouses and apartments won't be, organizing, voting against a referendum. But the question is this: how do we function? Do we express our opinion as citizens of Woodbridge to the Board of Selectmen at, for instance, the next, Dwight, when is the next Selectmen's meeting, Dwight?
Yeah, I was going to say is they're putting it on their agenda a week from today, the 8th. So that's when and that's when they're going to meet, and that's when they're going to talk about this further, and then maybe talking about, if everybody's in agreement, if there was no other offers coming in on a property, maybe holding a town meeting on this, and just as an informational meeting. So whatever we need to do, I would say, by this week, because the agenda is normally done by Friday, and then it's posted like the morning before, but the draft of the agenda and everything else is usually done by Friday. So we only have I would contact Beth. I would contact Beth and give her some ammo that when this comes up again at the Board of Selectmen meeting next Wednesday, she can address some of our concerns of what's been raised tonight. I mean, that's what.
Can't we just say that, in as much as the fact that we've been charged with this issue and studying it, we haven't had a chance to we have plans, we have schedules, but we need to be given time to come up with some effective suggestions. They shouldn't do anything precipitous until at least the spring. Can we say that?
No, I agree. But what I think we should do is, I think Beth should reach out to them and say, if we have other suggestions for the use of that land, like i.e. more of these houses, more of the affordable houses, would you be receptive in receiving our suggestions? These guys, okay, some of these are pretty well set. This is their proposal. This is what they want to do. This is how they're going to make their money. So if they are receptive and whatever, maybe another month, then
Well, they haven't put a ton of money into it, and as I said, my impression was that they're really anxious to know what we want, and then they'll give it to us, right? That's what a developer wants to do. It's cheaper. You tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you if I can.
Okay, my guess, let me explain something to you. Unless these people are Mexican drug lords laundering money, okay, which I don't think they are.
Yeah.
They will enter into a contract that will have land use contingencies because it's going to require a zone text change. So the process of the referendum might be quicker. They would need to know that, first of all, the town's going to do it, and then they would go to contract, then they would go to contract subject to the referendum. The referendum would then allow them to go forward with the conditions of the contract. What I'm hearing is we need to convey our thoughts to the Board of Selectmen about it. And we need to do that
quickly,
but in a private way, and then in a public way.
Right.
Because it's always good for someone. I mean, I think I can convey to the first selectman and everything what is transpired, and encourage her to listen to the tape of this meeting, the recording of this meeting, and listen to the comments. And so that, my philosophy has always been, it's always better to let someone know that you're about to drop the other shoe. You know what I mean? Or you're about to have a things, let them know so that they're not caught by surprise, caught off guard.
Yeah.
And, but I do think it's, unless someone is going to speak differently, you know, the bottom line is we could get a lot more units, but then you need to increase the density. Remember what Buddy said. Developers are in it to make money. They are not in it not to make money. So if you're going to demand.
Dominic, I got a question for you along those lines that I want to, I mean, do we have any idea of what the choke point is at which it becomes uneconomic? I mean, you know, again, I realize that the density can be changed to some degree, but at some point we have, you know, and maybe it's out, you know, it's beyond, certainly beyond my ken, but at some point it becomes undevelopable. You say, well, you need 100 affordable units on the property. Nobody's going to build it. I mean, I don't know where we are.
You're not. I think that knowing what I know of and the developments that I'm aware of, okay, for example, you know, I mean, Hawks Ridge and Shelton, and this is the way you look at it. Hawks Ridge and Shelton is 100 cluster attached, 109, a combination of cluster attached and cluster single family, I'm sorry, and attached units. It's on approximately 40 acres. We're talking about 140 acres. Now, this is not a townhouse obligation. You could probably easily, with substantial areas of open space, get 300 to 350 units on there. If you were talking about apartments, you were talking about townhouses, cluster townhouses, and you were talking about cluster single-family homes. You probably get about 300, 350, and have an abundance of room for open space. Now,
But the percentage would be 20% of affordable housing? Is that the maximum?
If you did 20%, huh? Pardon me?
Will 20% be the maximum that developers would go, let's say, give or take?
No.
For
When you're
affordable?
talking voluntary, a lot of places have 10, 15, 20. Usually they want it below the 30, okay? However, the situation, and to answer Jim's question, having played Woodbridge Country Club, okay? What the advantage of many of the cluster homes is that you can design to the topography. Where it becomes unaffordable in certain situations is when you have to do an enormous amount of site work, increasing in the cost per unit for site work. Okay, so in looking at their development, they have chosen the flat areas for the big homes for a 1.5 acre, because those need to be generally pretty flat. You know what I mean? You can have some rolling it, but those need to be generally pretty flat because you have a large home. You're talking about a $900,000 home with 5 bedrooms. So they need to be pretty flat. So they've chosen that and then work the other areas to do it. But as Dwight mentioned, they haven't done the engineering yet. But you are able to increase your density by working with the topography. And I think Woodbridge Country Club is, to a great extent, suitable for that, and therefore you reduce your ability. Now, there are other costs involved here. It's not cheap to take down that clubhouse. That's an expense. And I will bet you any amount of money you're going to involve in environmental asbestos and things of that nature with it.
And
so those are all the factors that go into it, and which is why normally you would need to increase your density in order to get affordable housing. You increase your density by providing alternative means of housing. You don't increase your density by 1.5 acre homes.
Okay, I just
So-
want to interject in here. I don't know if you guys have reviewed what town planning and zoning has effective as of September 7th. But as of September 7th, one of the things that becomes effective is what they call the opportunity housing multifamily development. And it automatically, as a minimum, requires 20% units for multifamily opportunity housing. So at this point, any development that occurred on the Country Club of Woodbridge, whatever you want to call it, unless the regs change again, would have to come in under that.
So they're not compliant. They're at 15%, right?
Wait a second, did that, Chris, does that apply to multifamily?
Yes.
All right, so you got to subtract out from then all the single families they're proposing. And
Depends on how they look at that development. If the development as a whole is taking advantage of the multifamily opportunity housing development plan, then they're going to look at the whole thing.
But that has to be where they have sewers. So how are you going to do the sewers and water there? Does it, it didn't say.
No.
Is sewer and water there?
it has sewer and water, that's, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. When
Agree with
these
you.
people would have to change the zone, and I haven't read it, but these people would most likely have to change the zone. And the commission, if the zone is a multifamily residential zone, then the commission, in order to make it applicable, would also have to change its definition, because the proposal that I'm seeing, which, as Dwight said, is in the early stages, is for single-family ownership and fee lots
On Ansonia.
on Ansonia and everything like that. And I assume I was told that there are attached units. I said, I don't see any attached units, because the problem is when you look at their proposal, it says individual lot sizes. There's this big focus on telling everybody that everybody has lots. And they said, oh, well, they're connected by a garage. And my response was, that's not what we call attached units. You know what I mean? I mean, they're attached, but it's not what the normal phrase is. But I mean, it's in the early stages. I agree. We need to make it known that we have a charge, and this, we need to get our feelings to the Board of Selectmen. I mean, there's, in some fashion, without creating, in my opinion, without creating at this stage any sort of like an adversarial thing, like we're giving you input as a town commission, here's our input. And I think one of the advantages there aren't many advantages to the WebEx and everything like that, but one of the advantages is that I will certainly let the first selectman know and anybody else know they should listen to this, they should access and listen to this discussion that the Housing Committee is having. And we are all citizens, so we can also express our own opinion with respect to it at any appropriate meeting. So getting back to the issue of what we are going to do about the survey, Kathy, are you going to be the point person in trying to get more information so that we can get these things disseminated? Is there a way to get it into the newsletter for this coming month? Will they, who is it to talk about? Betsy, what was it? Why am I drawing a blank on her name? Betsy?
Betsy.
Yeah, to get a big block outlined, black and black. Even if it says, if it's coming out shortly, even if it says Scrog Regional Survey to be a housing survey, very important, be involved, details to follow. But I don't know how we would get the details out if we don't.
I don't know what the plan is.
The details don't matter. As Donovan said at your last meeting, it's very simple. Just have people be on the watch for a survey and ask that their voice be heard. You don't have to.
Chris, my question is this: on the watch where?
Well, you've missed the newsletter for this month, so now you've got to get it out on Facebook. You've got to get it out via email.
But Chris,
see if we can put some posters up around town, but we lost the window for the newsletter.
No, I did see it on the newsletter. I saw it on the front page in a box on the bottom. It says, "Look out for the housing survey, the regional housing survey."
Okay, but now we've got to do more, and we've got to, if you're on, I mean, like Dwight's the president of the, I'm sorry, Dwight, the baseball.
of the
So
baseball league.
he could perhaps send something out that way. You've got Woodbridge Watch. You've got the dog park people who put stuff out regularly. I mean, you just need to let people know, please know there's a survey coming from the South Central Regional Council of Governments. Please participate, let your voice be heard.
I can do Facebook. I have Woodbridge Watch, Woodbridge Bethany page, the moms group, the all dog park, all that. I can do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I will call Eugene tomorrow. I am on vacation, but I will call him, and I normally, what they had told us before, that this survey was going to be out there for 3 weeks, because if it's longer, it's too long. People put off on doing it. So I'll find a confirmed date for when it's coming out, when it's going to end, and how it's coming out, whether it's coming out via a link that we can post on the town webpage, or if it's, you know, if paper copies can also be available, because it's not going to be a huge, long survey.
So we should just say details to follow. Then when you get us that information, we just update everything.
Yep.
Okay.
And Chris, if you want me to follow up with Eugene, I could do that. I realize you're on vacation.
It's
Like,
all right. I've been
or-
here more times than I count this week.
Yeah.
And by the way, town hall is open, so you can come into the town hall. So is the library, and so is the center building for senior activities. So there's places you can leave it. We can put up posters there. What can I tell you?
Well, at the beginning of the meeting, Chris, we weren't even sure they were going to allow paper copies, but I guess
I
they
don't
are.
know. I'll find
Oh, we
out
don't know
from
that.
Eugene.
Okay.
Should we plan to have a meeting of the outreach committee just to, you know, circle the wagons and make sure who's doing what and what's going to happen?
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, how long do you think it'll take you to get that information? I mean, are they pretty responsive, or do they usually take like 2 weeks or something?
If I talk to Eugene, he'll tell me whatever information he has. He's not going to hide it. You know.
Right.
Not that he's hiding
I-
it, but sometimes people don't return messages as quickly
Right.
as others. So
But
very
I would, and what I would like to have him do when you talk to him is then confirm all the information by sending you an email that you can then disseminate to the entire committee.
I can send him an email and then just forward it to you. Is that pretty simple?
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah, once he explains to you all the things, you know, as long as it in some fashion, either you to him, him to you, there's an email that then can go back to everybody saying, this is what the SCROG is going to be, this is what they're going to do. This is how long it's, this is when it's going to go out, this is when it has to come back, this is how it could be, there can be paper
I will
copies.
send him an
And then we
email
can all
as soon
work
as we
on,
finish
the outreach
this
committee
meeting,
can
so I
work on
get home
links
before the
and
tornado
everything
wipes
else.
out my house again.
Okay, so that's the next task, is to get that information, and we'll move it. Everybody, please mark September 27th. We're still doing it. I assume it's going to be remote at this point. We'll see what happens. But it's 7 o'clock on September 27th for the meeting with David Fink. Okay?
I can't host you all for a birthday party if we're going to be on Zoom.
Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye. Be
Cut
safe,
it off.
everybody, tonight. Don't drive through any puddles, please.